Gabe Daley, welcome to the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I appreciate you taking the time to come on. It's definitely an honor to have had the privilege to work with you for the past, let's see, we're probably around 6 months now, working
Mhm.
together. And of course, we've been kind of working together in a way for the last several years, but certainly more formally over the past 6 months. And your results have been absolutely phenomenal. And I wanted to bring you on and share that with our audience because I think it's really important for them to get a real world look at what this shit looks like. You know, when we turn on social media and we hear from people that have lost a good amount of weight, changed their lifestyle, changed their habits, we sort of have this preconceived notion of that it was easy for them. And I think it's been anything but. So, I'd love for you to just kind of share what that journey's looked like. And maybe you can start with just kind of your background and, kind of where you've come from.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I think a little bit about my background probably starts probably from the Marine Corps time. I joined the Marine Corps underweight. I had to get a waiver to join, and that's pretty much my life up until that point when I was 18.
You were,
In
what
the
were you,
first
like
year,
140?
no, I was the minimum was 111, and I weighed 107 when I enlisted.
Oh
So I had to
my
get I had to
God.
get I had to get a waiver just to join, and I couldn't do it, more than 5 crunches. I couldn't run. I was a scrawny little guy, but the one thing I was really good at, and even to this day, was doing pull-ups. So I
Yeah.
did 15 dead hang pull-ups, with no problem because I didn't weigh anything. But yeah, that after that was probably the downward trend, I should say. I ran really well, but for up until the 18, 19 years old, my family doctor always say, oh, eat as many carbs as you can. That's what's the problem. So fries, potatoes, anything I could, put in my body. And as you get older, right, that does its damage. And then I went to Iraq, and you're eating 4,000 calorie meal MREs 2, 3 times a day till that gets old. And then the weight just stayed on, and it just kept getting worse and worse.
How much weight did you gain through military?
Um, so I started, what was it, 107 when I went in. 4 years later, I was probably 170, 180.
Damn.
I'd say the majority of that was probably muscle. We did a lot of running. I mean, it was 5 days a week. On Fridays we do 11-mile run. So from that aspect, cardio part was good. But I would just make up for it by eating fast food all the time. When you're 18, 19 years old, you don't know how to make your own meal. You remember what your parents made you.
Yeah.
And it was just the bad habits that started right out the gate, I think. And as as you get older and kind of do that, but I think the biggest point where it really completely stopped, which I got in a car accident, broke my leg in half, and I couldn't have any weight bearing on my right leg for 90 days. And I probably put on 40 pounds. So I think at my heaviest, I was probably 220, 225. And, no muscle, just getting, fatter by the day. And I don't remember not eating out. I'd have a breakfast burrito from Jack in the Box in the morning. We go get, chili cheese fries for lunch, and in the evening with pizza or burgers, and that went on for years. And
Mm.
then I'd say I was surprised, but I shouldn't be. And I found out in 2013 when I tried to get life insurance that they denied me because my blood sugar at the time of taking the results was over 300, and
Unbelievable.
uh, and turned out my A1C was 8.8 at the time. And even then, I didn't know what that meant. Oh, take a pill, maybe don't eat any sweets, that kind of thing. And from 2013 up until literally, the beginning of this year, I didn't take it as seriously. I just thought I was taking a pill every once in a while, maybe not drink as much, maybe cut out as many burgers. But again, for the most part, I wanted to take it seriously, and that's why I reached out to you to try to get things on track starting in January.
We started training together, and just for some context so people understand, I was running a corporate wellness program for the company that Gabe works for. So we were running strength and conditioning classes for their employees in this phenomenal gym that they built out. And so Gabe started training with us right from the beginning, and
Hmm.
really was just crushing it in the gym, was obviously super dedicated to the training aspect of it. But you had been struggling, like you had no concept of what kind of the nutrition that you needed for your goals were. And I think, to be fair, like, throughout this whole time, like, you've always wanted to put on muscle mass. You've always wanted to look
Right.
bigger, look leaner. And obviously that's part of the process. But for you, it was more unique in that you were type 2 diabetic. And
Mhm.
frankly, the calories, the raw materials that you were putting in, just weren't being utilized very effectively. You're storing a lot of it as body fat. Obviously, you were overweight. So at what point in the process, coming in, you're learning some principles of strength training, you're getting stronger. At what point in the process did you kind of start to realize that you really needed to take a harder look at not just the training, but maybe the nutrition and lifestyle aspects?
I gotta be totally honest. I'm really competitive. We have small classes the core team of people that work down there. And I noticed I was getting stronger, but not a lot of my body was changing. And it took it to the point where I'm turning 40 in 2 weeks. And I think, a conceded goal, but I was like, I told you, I want to be swole by 40. I just want to be really fit by 40 years old. I decided that in December. I signed up for the program with you in January. And I wanted to do what the Marine Corps taught me to do, which is how far mentally can you go? How far physically can your body handle stress? And I knew that I had to make a change. I knew that's the part I wanted to do. And the hour in the morning, which half of it is probably talking and socializing and little lifting, I wanted to reverse that. I wanted to do as much as I possibly could, so I'm exhausted by the time I leave there, and what my body could or couldn't handle. I think that's kind of got to the point that I'm at now. Is I lift heavier, I lift more consistently, and the biggest part I think I gained from working with you was just the technique, the form, the proper form. Hell, I didn't know what supinated and pronated was. It took me 6 months to figure that grip out. Just from that. But it was little things like that, and it was just really taking it seriously. I mean, it's kind of the cliche thing to hear or say, but at the same time, I wanted to take it seriously, and I was wasting my time and your time by not taking the advice, and I wanted to make sure I was doing more of that.
How frustrating was it for you, though, to know that you were coming in the gym every day and training your ass off, and outlifting everyone else in the gym, but not seeing the type of body composition results that you were looking for?
Again, it's one of those things. You're trying, and nothing. You don't start to see the results. And was I expecting to have 20-inch biceps in 6 months? Honestly, yeah, I was. I was trying to get to that point, because I said, well, I thought I always heard what you guys would say, and I'd never really thought anything much of it. It's like, well, a burger has protein in it. That's beef. Cheese on a pizza has protein in it. You need that stuff. That's in the pyramid. The nutrition pyramid that they taught us when we were 8 years old. I never knew how the macros work. I always heard of it. I was, so many carbs, so many fats, so many protein. I didn't know what that meant until I actually started to do it. And again, I went through the phase when we were going down in our calorie count and our macros, what my body could do. I was starving. Like I couldn't take it anymore. Sneak a Dorito here, maybe half a sip of some soda, that kind of stuff. And then kind of your body gets used to it, or at least I got used to it. But what I started to notice is after 6-7 years, my waking fast blood sugar would be normally 120, 125, 130. I was like, oh, I guess that's normal for me. I'm diabetic. Until I really started taking my nutrition seriously and working out, that it started to drop to about 100, 105, then it dropped sub 100. And it was, stayed high 90s for a while, until it got to the points where it was like 70s and 80s. And now I'm averaging low 90s, with, my diet now. I wanted to find out exactly what, biologically what science was saying. And I got my blood work done. And, I couldn't break below 6.0 or 6.1 in my A1C. And just, 3 weeks ago now, I'm at 5.4. And 5.7 is pre-diabetic, and 6.0 and up is diabetic, and 5.4, my my primary care doctor had a sudden look on his face. He goes, I've only had three patients in my career that's actually beat diabetes, and nobody's done it to that level in just over a year. And again, I was at 5.8, 5.9 a year ago. So it dropped it to 5.4.
Technically, it was 6 months.
Yeah, well, yeah,
I mean,
6 months, from that point. But, even far back than a year ago from whenever I, last met with him, my annual thing. And he said, he goes, that's something to be proud of. And I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. And that's one thing I can probably hang my hat on that I think I've done well is stuck to this. I couldn't do it without my wife motivating me. We work out in our garage gym every day, go for our walks. Is it exhausting? Yeah, it's exhausting kind of walking. Is it exhausting to do it when it's 110 degrees in the garage? Yes. But I wanted to be able to do that, to say that I did it. Now it's a lifestyle change for me. I don't think I'll ever go back to that because of the basics that I've understood in how to manage my nutrition, how to manage my blood sugar, how I wake up in the morning and how I feel. That's the biggest benefit that I've seen so far, other than getting lean and things like that, is just how I wake up in the morning. I'm not as moody, not as grouchy. That part, I'm not tired. I'm not exhausted after eating a couple of potatoes.
you used to have some crazy blood sugar swings, I recall.
It was, again, I was waking fasting of blood sugar with nothing in my system. Wake up, just take my blood sugar. It was 120, 125. And to me, I thought that was normal. I never thought anything of it. I couldn't see for the first 45 minutes. It was always, the blood sugar crystals resting in my eyes is what they told me before. And it took a while to actually see. And now I don't have that problem. I get up, I'm ready to go. Kind of move around, get some coffee, and it's ready to train. If I could get up earlier, I would, and start that process in an hour and a half of training and dedicating that part. Just every day, it's an hour. Just there's 23 other hours in the day to do that. And it's the cliche thing. You kind of see people's posts on Instagram. Oh, I took this tea and I dropped 60 pounds in 2 months. You can do it too. I don't believe any of that, but I wanted to, I like that you reached out to me, and I want to be able to explain to, your audience that I'm a normal, everyday guy. I'm married. I have 6 kids. I took over the lease on 2 additional kids, so I have 8 kids total. So if there's anybody that I'm about as normal as it gets. I have a regular, I think a regular job like anybody else. I try to work hard, but what it's done for me is I canceled my gym membership. That saved me $160 a month. I invested in my own equipment in my garage, and I now that I know that I'm paying for it, this is my stuff. I think I'm more invested in getting this done. And if it's not overall for being, a little conceited about looking good in a tight shirt, I think the overall lasting effects of the benefits of my blood sugar and being around for these 37 kids that I have long term.
Well, that's
my
the
youngest
crazy.
is 7 months old. Yeah.
I mean, that's the craziest thing is I think if you put it into perspective and sort of look at the longevity of type 2 diabetics and the way that you were headed, fuck, man. I mean, you've probably added 20 years to your life. Honestly, I mean, it's hard to quantify that, but legitimately, and then just the quality of your life and the example you're setting for those kids. And because you think about, you knew nothing about nutrition. And I want to jump into kind of how your habits have evolved through the program. But, to you, it was normal just to eat fast food. And correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't your parents diabetic as well?
I don't have anybody that I know of on both my mom and my dad's side that isn't type 2 diabetic. My sister is type 1. She's been since 11 years old. I don't know anybody. I literally can't think of anybody that doesn't have that. And I was literally technically the last one to find out I was diabetic.
I think when you are indoctrinated into that, it's really easy to just say, for example, I was working with a Native American tribe some years ago, and it's the same type of thing in terms of everyone really, the majority of the people become type 2 diabetic at some point. And obviously with our culture now, it's getting earlier and earlier to the point where they no longer call it adult onset diabetes. It's now just type 2 because kids are freaking getting type 2 diabetes. But the language that some of the children were using when I was speaking with them was really when I get diabetes. Like it was just a foregone conclusion that they're going to become type 2 diabetic because the lifestyle and the eating habits in place are so not appropriate for, who they are, what they are, human consumption, if you will. And so it's pretty remarkable in that, just in that light. But, even more so is I'd love to hear just kind of how your nutrition knowledge and habits have evolved throughout the course of the program. Because again, you didn't really know much about nutrition. Obviously, you were getting stronger in the gym, but when we started working together, what was the sort of biggest aha for you from a nutritional standpoint in terms of whether it's be calories, whether it be macros, whether it be type of food? And
the biggest benefit is using all the tools that you provided, and I think MyFitnessPal was probably the easiest one. You scan your food in, you type what food in you ate, you got to measure it, you got to weigh it, and put all that in there. And I felt the biggest thing is like a lot of the marketing behind a lot of the foods that we would normally eat, butter, for instance. It's like, oh, this one's good for your heart. Yeah, scan a tablespoon of butter into MyFitnessPal, and you realize how much fat it has in there. And those are regular things. It's like, well, it's toast. Regular white bread is better than wheat bread, or vice versa, whatever that is. How many carbs that is. And when I associate what I would normally eat for breakfast, some toast, a couple of eggs, would throw some butter on there, or peanut butter, whatever that is, I was realizing it was noon, and I was through with my macros for the day. I'm like, well, this is bullshit. I'm just not going to log in. Ben won't know any different. But I'm not cheating you by finding out exactly what I was eating. I was cheating myself. So as soon as I realized, it's like, well, if I plan for what I'm going to eat for breakfast the next day, and it sounds silly, right? But if you plan for what you're going to eat for breakfast, if you plan what you're going to eat for lunch, if you plan for what you're going to eat for dinner, when I say my wife does the majority of that. She does a lot of the logging, the weighing, and all that. She puts that all in there for me. And does it get old eating eggs? Yes. But what's not going to get old is my desire to keep getting better, to keep getting stronger, to rub it in my buddy's face in our morning fitness crew. How much I've improved, how many more pull-ups I can do now, or how lean I am. Hell, I've gone down 2 shirt sizes. I've had to buy smaller pairs of underwear because they fit too loose. And I'm not making a joke of it.
How much weight are you down?
I'm down 21 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm down 21 pounds technically since January. But I'm down 21 pounds. I've gone down, I was a 36-inch waist. I'm about a 33, 32-inch now. That's the biggest part. Is my midsection's probably been down.
From a
large shirt to medium shirt, and again, and data, right? Tracking, food, taking your measurements, taking your weight, tracking my blood sugar, and I'm very much consistent, high 80s, low 90s for my fasting blood sugar. And it's not that I can't have carbs. I've started reintroducing some potatoes and some rice to get where I need to get, but I think I'm smarter about it now. Do I need a whole bowl of white rice? No. A cup of rice with whatever I'm eating in a high protein diet, and it works for me. And I pretty much stick to the same things that I know day in and day out. Some eggs with some turkey, some egg whites, throw a little bit of hot sauce in there for flavor. Lunch, it's some grilled chicken on some lettuce, that type of stuff, and maybe some tea, some iced tea with it. Just kind of break it up.
Yep.
I'm not one of those people that just chicken with no flavor. Iceberg lettuce. And that's it, and drink water. I still have a long way to go, but those are the little things that I started to do, and then try to get to where my macros are every day. Which to me, it's a game. It's a game that I want to beat every day. Is to hit my macros within 1 or 2 grams every single day. Get my steps in. It's 112 degrees today, but I got to go out there and get it done. And it gets the kids out with us, and it teaches them, the fundamentals of eating right and exercising.
What do you say to the people that kind of guffaw at having to track all of that information on a daily basis, and what a pain in the ass, and I don't want to have to deal with that? Kind of what's your perspective there?
I think if we took a little bit more time on less time on Instagram and following Facebook posts and use that to log in your food, I think it'll have a lot more benefit in the long run, Or if you want to be on Instagram and take a walk, do that too. Does it get boring, walking around your neighborhood? Yeah, but it's what do you want to get out of it? For me, I wanted to be swole. I wanted to be big. I wanted to look like a fitness person. That's not in my DNA. So I got to work a lot harder to do, and I got to make sure my nutrition's right and my form is right and the exercise that I'm doing. If it says, it's a 8 count or 8 reps, I'm doing all 8 reps or 10 reps or 12 reps or hell 100 calf raises if I need to. Whatever that part is, I'm not cheating anybody but myself by not completing the exercise. I'm not cheating anybody by myself but not eating the nutrition that I need to every day, day in and day out.
Yeah. Let's jump into that because I know that you've had phenomenal success in terms of losing body fat, no longer technically type 2 diabetic. It's absolutely remarkable. But, this is the real world and we all have ongoing struggles. And so aside from just the fact that you have a million children and, a busy job and all this shit to deal with that we all deal with to some degree, right now for you, it's sort of the frustration of saying, I'm having a really hard time putting on muscle mass and not, I know that you're not as happy as you'd like to be with kind of your physique as having as much muscle mass as you want. And you specifically said, I've been the skinny kid for the first half of my life and I don't want to become the skinny guy, now.
Right.
So maybe you could just elaborate for a second as to kind of what you're experiencing right now, and then we can kind of talk through what the course of action is.
Yeah, so about 3 weeks ago, we lowered some macros. I went from 175 grams of carb down to 125, just to get that body fat back down and be more insulin sensitive for the carbs that I am taking in. Again, I'm in week 4 of that program, and I feel like I need to put on an extra 5-pound plate when I'm lifting. I feel like I need to squeeze in another gram or 2 of protein, and it's not doing anything. I've been at 167, 168 for 3 weeks now. And now I want to put on muscle. I want to put on that, that weight, the weight in, a healthy weight in muscle. And I feel like I can't. And it's not a lack of lifting more weights at this point or a heavier weight or doing more reps. I even asked you, I said, should I do 2 a day, to burn myself out? And said, use that energy to do another 1,000 or 2,000 steps or whatever we need to get done. So I got to be totally honest. I'm completely frustrated. I want to do that. I'm walking around most of the time if I'm on a conference call for work. But I'm at that point. I feel like I'm kind of scared. It's like, I want to put on more mass. It's not about fitting, looking nice in a shirt. I need to put on muscle now. And I don't know if I've gone too far in cutting my carbs or not enough protein, but that's the part I'm trying to answer now.
Sure.
Is it putting another plate on doing a squat? Is it another, 10 pounds lifting when I'm doing dumbbell presses? Whatever that is. But I'm ready to put on that muscle. So I'm at that point. Again, I'm at almost a month mark of that deficit, but I'm ready to do more.
Yeah, it's such a good point and such a good sort of look at one of the things that everyone struggles with at some point in one of these programs, especially when we're trying to lose body fat. And frankly, man, for every single guy I work with, the same thing comes up is we want to be big, but we also want to be lean. And what most people don't understand is that typically you can't do both at the same time unless you have the help of maybe some anabolics, which we're not going there. You're a 40-year-old dude and we want to do this in a realistic way. And oftentimes it's not about the volume of training per se. In fact, oftentimes it becomes, okay, well, are you optimizing your sleep? Are you getting enough just overall physical activity, like we said about the steps? And are you really making sure that your recovery is on point so that the hard training that you do, you're recovering as effectively as possible? But the reality there within that is if we are in a deficit, which is what we need to lose body fat, and my main concern for you here is, and I think this applies to most people, and especially guys, is like I said, we want to get big, we want to get lean. Generally, you can't do both at the same time. Like sometimes there is, if you haven't really been lifting much before, even in a deficit, you'll still lay down some new muscle tissue if you're relatively untrained. But the way that I do things, and I think the way that most good coaches would logically do it, is to help you get as lean as possible first. Because what happens when you get lean is you become more insulin sensitive, right? So we're losing body fat. Body fat is this metabolically inflammatory tissue that influences hormones in a negative way. And that's both adipose tissue and subcutaneous or visceral body fat, this body fat that we store deep around our organs. So for you, like we've seen such crazy results in terms of your midsection reducing in size. And that's not only just from the fat that's around the outside of the muscles, but also deep around your organs. And all of that body fat influences the hormones that your body produces, your androgens, your growth hormone, your testosterone, all of those things. So by reducing that first, we're helping you function better. We're helping all of your cells function better to the degree that the carbs that you do consume, as we're seeing evidenced by your blood sugar, is you're utilizing those carbs more effectively so that you're storing them in the muscle and in the liver to be utilized as energy, because you have more receptors available on those cells to soak up the sugars and cling on to the insulin to soak up those sugars. So it's incredibly important that we focused on that at first. And I've explained that to you time and again, and I know you understand that, but I'm really just laying this out. And I get now you're at the point where you're like, okay, man, like we're getting leaner. and in my mind, we could still get leaner, but I completely understand. And so this is a pivotal point where we say, okay, now we need to figure out, all right, we need a period of calorie surplus, or at the very least, some consistent maintenance. And right now you're in a deficit calories. So what we're likely going to do is we're going to bump you into a maintenance. So we'll fairly significantly increase your calories to what I think is your quote unquote maintenance level. And that's a range, but just because we have so much data collected over the last 6 months, I can see from your weight changes and where it's plateaued and been stagnant, what likely is that maintenance zone. So by bumping you up into maintenance, we'll be giving you more raw materials to be utilized to lay down new muscle tissue. But the reality is, just so you understand, like if we're in a deficit, our goal is to just maintain that lean muscle tissue and lose as much body fat as possible to get you as healthy as possible. And especially you having the prevalence and the genetics to the predisposition to be type 2 diabetic, right? So it would have been illogical for us to try and gain. It would have been irresponsible to have us try and increase your calories to the point where, because that's what it takes to lay down new muscle tissue. You need to be in a surplus, which means you need to be eating more calories than you're expending. But your body's not utilizing those calories effectively. So you're going to lay down more fat mass. And you experience that, before we started together.
And even when we started talking about, hey, because we go down for a couple of weeks and, have one day of high carbs. And before I was doing better with my blood sugars, again, a few potatoes, a cup of rice, my sugar go right back to where it was before. And I didn't understand that. I always thought, I was like, man, Ben's an asshole, man. Fuck this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I got to take your advice. I have to listen to what he's saying. I have to understand exactly what he means by, making sure we're getting the right rest, making sure we're hydrating, making sure we're doing this, and make sure that, do I want to go out there every single day and lift when it's hot as hell out there? No. But after a couple of reps, it's like, okay, I'm good. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth mentioning, one of the biggest things I saw the improvement in, I went from about 5.5, 6 hours worth of sleep. Now I get 7 hours plus. On good days, I'm 8.5 hours. Yeah. And it's a good REM sleep. I'm not tossing and turning, all night, because, I'm having digestion for whatever we ate for dinner. I sleep well, I get up and I'm ready to go, day in, day out. But I think the pandemic is probably a big part of that, because there's nowhere to go for the longest time.
You don't have to drive for 3 hours a day either.
Yeah, I'm not driving for an hour and a half to get to the office, work out and then work all day and then drive for an hour and a half back, and I'm beat by that point. So yeah. I didn't have any excuses. All the excuses have been removed. And again, I have a good partner. Jasmine, my wife, she's a really good partner and helped me with the putting the meals together, and helping me log it in. She'll send me whatever she weighed out, and then we motivate each other to get out there every morning at 6:30.
Yeah.
Get some stretching in, get those squats in.
Yeah, and it's just that's what we have to keep coming back to is it's never what we think it is. It's never when we look
Mm-hmm.
and see people make these transformations. Um, you don't get the subtext. You don't
Right.
get the context of it. You don't see often the timelines responsible for it. You don't see if there's any, anabolic assistance, and frankly, you don't see the genetics involved. But the reality here is like, yeah. So we have action steps that we can take in terms of bumping up your calories, modifying the workouts to some degree. Um, and then continuing to focus on all these foundational principles that are going to keep supporting you. And that's the best that we can do. But also the reality is like, you're just not going to put on 20 pounds of lean muscle tissue in
Right.
any reasonable amount of time, even in a year. It's like some of the best, biggest bodybuilders in the industry, even with the help of anabolics, were only putting on maybe 8 or 10 pounds of muscle mass, and they trained for a living and ate for a living. So it's really us kind of playing this game of toggling between what can we get away with in terms of bumping up your calories without it too significantly impacting your blood sugar, which is such a phenomenal tool for us to utilize to be able to tell how you're responding, and especially to the different types of carbs, because we know you do respond differently to some carbs versus
Yep.
others. And then just paying attention to, okay, what's happening with weight, what's happening with body composition, what's happening with strength. And we'll continue to play that game in terms of, okay, so we're going to come out of this deficit. We'll bump you into maintenance. We'll spend a few weeks there. We'll see how you respond, see what happens to energy, see what happens to training basically your strength in the gym, and then
Mm-hmm.
make sure you're not putting on too much body fat. Because also what people don't understand is when you're in a surplus, you're not only just going to put on muscle tissue, but you're going to put on fat mass as well. That's just how the
Right.
body works, because you're consuming more calories than you're expending. So that's just what happened.
It's just setting that realistic goal. And I think initially, up until January, I think we're rounding 5 years, the program's been in place at work. And I showed up pretty much every day, did the workout and then went to work. And it was, I enjoy doing it because it's a good stress reliever. But I think at the same time, I think I had a realistic goal. I wanted to be, as big as you guys have been doing this professionally for 15 years. Like, oh, I should be that big right now. Or I should, my arm should be bigger than that. What I didn't realize is other people were noticing my body before I was. Like, oh, you lost some weight. Oh, look, your face is thinning out. That kind of stuff. You haven't seen anybody in a few months, especially with all this going on. I want to be the one that shows back up to the office and everybody's like, man, what did you do? And I'm not saying that from a perspective of like how I look in my shirt or my clothes from that aspect. I want to be able to tell them, hey, I beat diabetes. You beat diabetes, like, oh yeah, I can also do some more pull-ups now too. But that's not the benefit I was looking for. I was looking at that I don't want to be on medication, every day for the rest of my life, taking 3 or 4 medications in a day sometimes, just to get to that maintenance level. Now I don't need it. And even my PCP says you don't need 2 of these 3. Metformin is probably the only one I still take to help manage wherever I'm at, because I'll never
Yep.
be non-diabetic. I'll be more receptive to get it, or be if I don't control it. But from a clinical
Yeah.
standpoint, a 5.4 that's not even pre-diabetic.
Right.
And I want to be able to be that success case and teach my kids, again, because of type 2 and because it's in our family history, for them to do it. I think the biggest win I could probably share with your audience is that our 4-year-old in daycare, they had a dentist go to the daycare and say, hey, guys, what's the difference between good foods and bad foods? And they had a little box of the raisins, a little tiny boxes, a little snack size, and a little sample size or the snack size of Skittles, and said, well, which one's better for you? My son raises his hand. He goes, well, which one has more calories? And
That's
he's 4
awesome.
years old. He doesn't even know what a calorie is, but he hears us talk about calories. He hears us talking about macros and stuff like that. But he knew to ask the question, which one has more calories? And a lot of what our habits they're picking up on now, they didn't like eggs before. Now they kind of try a little bit here and there. They don't even know that they had sugar-free syrup, on their waffles that they're eating. but it's little steps, right? Baby steps. You try to teach them at a young age. And I was going to even say that's for me. It wasn't just going from 5,000 calories a day down to 2,000 calories. It's, cutting out. Do I really need to eat this with the tortilla? I'm a Mexican in the Mexican family. You have flour tortillas and everything. You don't eat with pork. It's a tortilla. It's like, well, how much could I benefit by not eating that? How much carbs are in that? Or do you really need 2 pieces of toast? Maybe cut down to 1 and then maybe get rid of the toast over time. But the caloric deficit, I didn't really understand that until I actually started doing it, and the way that I felt. My body went through a shock at first, and then you kind of get used to it. And to be honest, I don't miss it. I don't miss drinking, 2 or 3 beers, hanging out with friends. Do I still do it? Yeah, but I don't do it as often. I don't need that. I don't feel like, that I don't want to go backwards. I actually feel guilty a little bit taking in too many carbs or too much, fat, or it could be eat a whole pizza by myself. I'd probably get nauseous eating 1 slice, the way it is now. And that's not to say that anybody, you can't enjoy whatever you want. It's just moderation. It's cutting your calories and managing to whatever your expectations are. I'd rather feel better and look better than what I feel like after, devouring a large pizza by myself.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're setting a great example for your family, for all of, people that you hang around with. And the reality is that, the reality is most people aren't willing to put in the effort. As much as I hate to say it, it's easier to just be uncomfortable and be in pain oftentimes than it is to make the effort to make massive lifestyle change. And I get that. And everyone finds kind of their tipping point. But with that said, assuming someone is kind of maybe teetering on the edge of really wanting to do something, what suggestions would you make for them? What action steps would you say are relevant?
I think it's set an attainable goal. Is that cliche to say? Yeah, everybody says, oh, I want to lose 5 pounds. But say have a realistic goal for yourself and do it for yourself. If that's losing 5 pounds, then, you lose the 5 pounds and then start with another 5. Instead of losing 20 pounds, do it in 5-pound increments if that works better for you. But I think the biggest thing, and I keep saying, is finding a good partner to work out with, a good partner to have this goal with. The small circle of friends that I have now, when I talk to them, I share exactly what we eat and how we're doing that. I think, yeah, that's bullshit. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. And then I pick up that they're starting to do that. They're starting to drink more water, starting to go on these walks. And, maybe they don't need, again, a whole pizza by themselves. It's a couple of them. And I notice we go out to dinner now, even the restaurants that are open, they're eating a salad versus, a steak with a baked potato. Just the little changes. And if I can make an influence on that, it's just to say that. Find a good partner, a good circle of people that will help motivate you, and they'll help keep you in line. And I'm the first person to say is I need direct criticism. I need you to tell me and not sugarcoat it. If I'm not doing right, then tell me I'm not doing right so I can get back on track. But if I even hear somebody can do 1 more pull-up than me, it's on.
Awesome.
It's on, and there's no way they're going to beat me. There's no way they're going to do 5 pounds more in a dumbbell set than I can do. And it's finding those little goals.
That's good. I have no problem calling you out and telling you to increase in your steps. Last question, man. Who would you recommend kind of the coaching program to?
The people are just like me. If you're or not just like me, if your regular regimen is fitness, or you're struggling with that, I think the people that are especially people with diabetes, it's such an overwhelming, it's a normal thing to have diabetes now, it seems. But if you don't think you can do it, these are the people that I hope that your audience hears, is that, yeah, you can do it, but you got to start somewhere. Got to start walking. If that's something you can manage to do, or you can't afford the gym, just walk wherever you need to do. Do some push-ups, start somewhere and stick with it. Just stick with it the most that you can, the best that you can. And when you don't think you can do some more, try to do 1 more pull-up. Try to do 1 more mile of walking. Again, I'm my last person. I'm not an Instagram influencer. I don't have anything to gain from, talking about any of this other than the benefit that you'll feel when you sleep, when you wake up in the morning and you're not as grouchy, and those are the people that I hope your audience can hear. It's just, I'm a normal everyday person. I'll be 40 in 2 weeks. I have a ton of kids. They're constant. They're probably outside the door right now, waiting for some snacks. I'm a regular everyday person just like anybody else. And if the cliche, if I can do it, you can do it. I'm not trying to sell slim fast.
Yeah.
I just like do it for yourself. Do it for yourself. Do it for your family. Do it for your kids. But at the end of the day, do it because you could do one more pull-up than the guy that you work out with in the gym. That's my short-term motivation, and
That's
it gets
awesome.
grown into what it is.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on and share your journey. And like I said, dude, it's been an absolute honor to have the privilege to work with you and your wife over the past 6 months and just to see your guys' progress, to see how your lifestyles have changed, to see your energy levels, to see how you impact people around you, to see how the impact you're making on your children. I mean, this is just absolutely life-changing. And that's why I do this, is just because I know by helping you, you're going to help your entire circle of people in a positive way. And I think that's the best that we can do. And it's just food and exercise, and it's so seemingly
Yeah,
simple, but so terribly difficult in this day and age. And so having a little guidance, having a little structure, having a good support system, I think it's all paramount. So thank you, man. I really appreciate you.
thanks for having me on.
And I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Ben. Thanks.